The laughter hit me like a slap. My husband Ryan leaned back in his leather chair, swirling his whiskey as his colleagues chuckled around our dining table. "Not everyone can understand business talk," he said, his eyes sliding over me dismissively. "Some people just don't have the education for it." The room erupted in knowing smiles. I forced my lips into a polite curve while my stomach twisted into knots. Marcus from accounting nodded sympathetically, as if I were a child who needed patience. Ryan's hand rested on the table, his college ring catching the candlelight, the ring I'd helped pay for. That night, something inside me cracked open. I wouldn't let him humiliate me again. My name is Wendy Pierce, and this is the story of how I became invisible in my own marriage. I grew up in a small apartment where my mother cleaned houses and my father worked double shifts at the factory. College was my dream, something bright and distant like a star I could never quite reach. I'd saved 2 semesters' worth of tuition by the time I turned 19, working weekends at the diner on 5th Street. Then I met Ryan at a community event. He was charismatic, ambitious, studying business administration at the State University. He talked about changing the world, building empires, making something of himself. I fell for his vision before I fell for him. Looking back now, I wonder if he ever saw me at all, or just what I could give him. Ryan's 3rd year of college arrived with a problem. His parents refused to co-sign another student loan. His grades were good, but his family had their own financial troubles after his father's business failed. "I might have to drop out," he told me one night, his head in his hands. We'd been dating 8 months. I looked at my own savings account, at the tuition money I'd been guarding so carefully. What if I helped? The words left my mouth before I could stop them. He looked up, hope flooding his face. "Really? You'd do that?" I nodded, already calculating which shifts I could pick up. "We're a team," I said. He kissed me, grateful and tender. "I'll pay you back, Wendy. I promise. Once I graduate, we'll both make it." I believed him completely. I took a second job cleaning offices at night. My days blurred into a routine of coffee, smiling at customers during my receptionist shift, then mopping floors until midnight. Ryan studied while I worked. Every month, I transferred money for his tuition, his textbooks, his meal plan. My own college fund dwindled, then disappeared entirely. Just one more year, I told myself, scrubbing corporate bathrooms at 2 a.m., then we'll both have our turn. My mother asked once why I looked so tired. I lied and said I was fine. Pride wouldn't let me admit I'd chosen his dreams over mine. The semester before his graduation, the final tuition bill arrived, $3,000 short. Ryan's family still couldn't help. Neither could mine. I stared at that number for 3 days straight, feeling something precious slipping away. My grandmother's ring sat in its velvet box, a delicate gold band with a small emerald. She'd given it to me before she died, pressing it into my palm with trembling fingers. For something important, she'd whispered. I held it under the pawn shop's fluorescent lights, my throat tight. The clerk offered me $3,200. I took it. Ryan never asked where the money came from. He graduated 3 months later with honors, his parents beaming in the auditorium. At the celebration dinner, he held my hand across the table and said, "You'll never have to struggle again, Wendy. I promise." His mother dabbed her eyes, proud of her son's accomplishment. No one mentioned my name in the toasts. I told myself it didn't matter. Love meant sacrifice, didn't it? Soon, it would be my turn. 6 months after graduation, Ryan landed a position at Greenfield Corporate Solutions. The salary was impressive, the opportunities endless. He bought new suits, traded his old car for something sleeker. I waited for him to mention my education, to talk about paying me back so I could return to school. Instead, he started correcting the way I spoke. "It's with whom, not with who," he'd say at dinner. He suggested I dress more professionally when we went out. "Image matters in my field," he explained. Slowly, like fog creeping in, I noticed him introducing me differently at company events. Not as my wife Wendy who supported me through college, but simply my wife with no elaboration. Then one evening, I wasn't introduced at all. I stood beside him at a networking mixer, invisible, while he discussed market strategies with a group of executives. When someone finally asked about me, he said, "Oh, this is Wendy," and changed the subject. The company holiday party was held at an expensive hotel downtown. I wore my best dress, the navy one I'd bought on sale 3 years ago. Ryan wore his designer suit, the one that cost more than my monthly salary. I tried to join conversations, to be the supportive partner. But every time I spoke, I felt eyes glaze over, attention shifting elsewhere. Near the dessert table, I overheard 2 of Ryan's colleagues talking. "Is that Ryan's wife?" one asked. The other nodded. "Yeah, the charity case." They laughed softly. "He told us she never went to college." "Sweet girl, but not exactly in his league anymore." My hands went cold around my wine glass. I looked across the room at Ryan, laughing with his boss, completely unaware or uncaring that his lies had spread like poison through his entire professional circle. He caught my eye and smiled, that charming smile I'd once loved. I smiled back, but something had shifted irrevocably inside me. I found the box by accident, tucked in the back of our closet while looking for winter blankets. Inside were all of Ryan's college documents, loan papers, tuition statements, fee schedules. My name was everywhere. Electronic transfer confirmations from my bank account to the university bursar. Receipts I'd saved meticulously because that's who I am, someone who keeps records. 5 years of evidence that I'd funded his entire education. I sat on the bedroom floor, papers spread around me like proof of a crime. My hand shook as I began taking photos with my phone, one document at a time. The amounts added up to over $40,000, every dollar earned by my labor, my exhausted nights, my abandoned dreams. I created a folder on my computer, backed it up to the cloud, and titled it simply, Education Fund. Then I put the box back exactly where I'd found it. Ryan never noticed it had been disturbed. That evening, I confronted him. Not angrily, I'd learned that anger made him shut down. Instead, I asked quietly over dinner, "Why do your friends think I never went to college?" He didn't even pause cutting his steak. "Does it matter?" I set down my fork. "You told them I'm uneducated." He sighed, as if I were being difficult. "Wendy, you wouldn't understand how appearances work in corporate culture. It's easier if people think we're on the same educational level." My voice stayed steady. "But we're not, according to you. You're above me." He looked up then, irritation flickering across his face. "Don't be dramatic. I'm just managing perceptions. It's not personal." But it was personal. It was the most personal thing in the world. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat at my laptop and began organizing every receipt, every bank transfer, every piece of evidence into a single, undeniable file. I didn't know yet what I'd do with it. I just knew I needed the truth documented and ready. 2 weeks later, Ryan announced he was hosting a dinner party. "Some important people from work," he explained. "I need you there, but please, just try not to talk too much about things you don't understand." The words were casual, almost kind, as if he were protecting me from embarrassment rather than creating it. I looked at him across the breakfast table, this man I'd sacrificed everything for, and felt nothing but cold clarity. "Of course," I said softly. "I'll be on my best behavior." He smiled, relieved, and kissed my forehead before leaving for work. I spent that day preparing, not just the dinner menu, but something else entirely. I opened my laptop and attached the education fund folder to a draft email. The recipient list was empty, waiting. All I needed was the right moment. The dinner was scheduled for Saturday. That gave me 4 days to decide if I had the courage to detonate my marriage and his carefully constructed lies. Saturday evening arrived with perfect weather and expensive wine. 8 guests filled our dining room, Ryan's colleagues, their spouses, his boss Harold. I'd prepared everything beautifully: roasted chicken, garlic potatoes, fresh bread. Ryan beamed at the head of the table, holding court about market projections and corporate strategy. I served and smiled, the perfect hostess. Then Marcus from accounting asked me what I thought about the new financial regulations. I started to answer, drawing on knowledge I'd gained from reading Ryan's old textbooks. Ryan interrupted smoothly. Wendy doesn't really follow business news. Polite laughter rippled around the table. Harold's wife Patricia gave me a sympathetic look. Ryan continued, his voice warm but condescending, not everyone has the education for these kinds of discussions. It takes years of study to really grasp economic theory. More knowing smiles. He reached over and patted my hand. But she makes excellent chicken, doesn't she? The table laughed again. I smiled too, even as humiliation burned through every nerve. Under the table, my other hand gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles went white. After dinner, while I served coffee and dessert, Ryan launched into his origin story. I'd heard it 100 times, but never quite like this. I came from nothing, he told his audience, his voice full of hard-won pride. My family couldn't support my education. I worked my way through college, juggling jobs and classes, determined to make something of myself. Patricia murmured admiringly. Harold nodded with respect. No one mentioned my name. No one asked how a full-time student managed to pay $40,000 in tuition while working his way through. I set down the coffee tray carefully, my hand steady despite the rage building in my chest. Ryan caught my eye and winked, including me in his moment of triumph. That wink broke something final in me. I excused myself to the kitchen, pulled out my phone, and opened the draft email. The recipient list filled quickly. Every person sitting in that dining room had their email address from the company directory Ryan kept on our shared computer. My finger hovered over the send button. Then I heard Ryan's voice from the other room, to those who believe in hard work and self-made success. I pressed send. The phone started buzzing 3 minutes later. First Patricia's, then Marcus's, then Harold's. One by one, they checked their messages with casual curiosity that quickly shifted to confusion, then shock. I walked back into the dining room carrying a fresh pot of coffee, my expression serene. Ryan was mid-sentence about quarterly projections when Harold interrupted. Ryan, did you send this? He held up his phone. Ryan frowned. Send what? Marcus turned his screen toward Ryan. The color drained from my husband's face as he saw the attachment, dozens of bank transfers, each one showing my name, his tuition bills, 5 years of documented financial support. The subject line read simply, self-made success. Patricia looked from her phone to me, understanding dawning. You paid for his college? Her voice was quiet, but in the sudden silence it rang like a bell. I set down the coffee pot and met Ryan's eyes across the table. Every penny, I said calmly. While working 2 jobs. I thought you all should know who really funded his education. Ryan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Wendy, what are you doing? I smiled the same polite smile I'd worn all evening. Just correcting the record. You said I didn't understand business, but I understand investments. And I'm done with bad ones. The dinner party ended quickly after that. Guests made awkward excuses, gathering coats and purses while avoiding Ryan's eyes. Harold paused at the door, his expression unreadable. We'll talk Monday, Ryan, was all he said. Patricia squeezed my hand on her way out. Good for you, she whispered. When the last guest left, Ryan turned on me with fury I'd never seen before. How could you do this? You've humiliated me in front of my colleagues, my boss. I began clearing plates, my movements calm and methodical. I humiliated you? That's interesting. He followed me into the kitchen. This was private. You had no right. I set down the plates carefully and turned to face him. Private? You made my education, or lack of it, a public joke. You built your entire professional image on lies about being self-made while erasing every sacrifice I made. My voice stayed level, cold. I just told the truth, Ryan. If the truth humiliates you, maybe you should examine your lies. He tried a different approach then, his anger shifting to desperation. Wendy, please. You don't understand what you've done. My reputation at work, I held up my hand. I understand perfectly. I understand that you've spent 2 years rewriting history, pretending I don't exist except as your uneducated wife. I understand that you took credit for achievements built on my labor. I pulled off my wedding ring, something I'd been considering for weeks but hadn't had the courage to do until now. The gold band felt light in my palm. I understand that the man I loved enough to sacrifice my own dreams for doesn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did. I placed the ring on the kitchen counter between us. Ryan stared at it, his face cycling through emotions, shock, anger, fear. You're not serious. You can't leave me over this. I picked up my purse and car keys. I'm not leaving you over this. I'm leaving you because of who you've become. Or maybe who you always were, and I was too blind to see it. The door closed quietly behind me. I didn't slam it. I didn't need to. I spent that night at my friend Lauren's apartment. She'd been telling me for a year that Ryan had changed, that he treated me poorly, but I defended him out of habit and hope. Now, sitting on her couch with tea growing cold in my hands, I told her everything. Lauren listened without interruption, her expression shifting from sympathy to outrage. He called you uneducated? You, who put him through college? She shook her head in disbelief. Wendy, you know I work in corporate recruitment. Word spreads fast in professional circles. By Monday morning, everyone at Greenfield will know the truth. I hadn't thought that far ahead. The email had been an impulse of hurt and anger, a desperate need to stop being invisible. Do you think I went too far? I asked. Lauren looked at me like I was crazy. Are you kidding? You went exactly far enough. He's been committing reputation fraud, taking credit for a narrative that wasn't his. Companies care about integrity. About truth. She reached over and squeezed my hand. You didn't ruin him, Wendy. You just stopped participating in his lies. By Monday afternoon, my phone was full of missed calls from Ryan. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I met with a divorce attorney, a woman named Patricia Flores who came highly recommended. She reviewed the emails, the bank transfers, the documented evidence of my financial support. This is quite comprehensive, she said, impressed. In terms of divorce settlement, you have a strong case for reimbursement. I hadn't even thought about money. I just wanted out. But Patricia explained that 5 years of financial support, especially when it enabled his current earning capacity, could be considered a marital investment. He built his career on your foundation. The court recognizes that. We filed papers that afternoon. Clean, simple, irreconcilable differences. I didn't ask for alimony or support. I just wanted what I'd given back, not the money, which was long gone, but my dignity. Patricia promised to handle everything. I signed the papers and felt lighter than I had in years, as if I'd been carrying invisible weight I'd finally set down. The next morning, Ryan showed up at Lauren's apartment. She answered the door, her arms crossed, her expression stern. She doesn't want to see you. Through the doorway, I could see him. He looked terrible, rumpled suit, dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed. Wendy, please. Just talk to me. Against Lauren's advice, I stepped forward. We stood in the doorway, a careful distance between us. What do you want, Ryan? He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing. I want to fix this. I made mistakes, I know that. But we can work through this. I studied his face, looking for sincerity. All I saw was panic. Are you sorry you hurt me, or sorry that people found out? He hesitated too long. That hesitation told me everything. I'm sorry, he finally said, but the words were empty. I'm sorry too, I replied. I'm sorry I spent 5 years loving someone who couldn't see my worth. But I'm not sorry I told the truth. I stepped back and closed the door. Through the wood, I heard him call my name once more, then the sound of footsteps retreating down the hall. The rumors spread through Greenfield Corporate Solutions like wildfire. I heard about it through Lauren, who heard it from her friend in accounting, who heard it from someone who worked on Ryan's floor. Harold had called Ryan into his office for a clarification meeting about his background. The company did periodic verification of employee credentials, and Ryan's self-made narrative had been part of his performance reviews, his promotion justifications. Now those claims looked questionable. Had he lied on his application? Exaggerated his accomplishments? The documentation I'd sent proved he hadn't been self-supporting during college, but what else might be embellished? Corporate culture is built on trust and reputation. Once those crack, everything becomes suspect. I didn't feel triumphant hearing this news. I felt sad, exhausted, and strangely relieved. The truth was out, and I didn't have to carry his lies anymore. Whatever happened to Ryan's career now was the consequence of his own choices, not my revenge. I'd simply stopped being complicit in the fiction he'd created. I moved into a small studio apartment across town, a place with old hardwood floors and windows that let in morning light. It was mine, paid for with money I earned, decorated with things I chose. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. One evening, standing in front of my bathroom mirror, I made a decision. I opened my laptop and navigated to the community college website. They offered evening classes, online options, flexible schedules for working adults. Business administration, ironically. I'd learned so much helping Ryan study, reading his textbooks, listening to his lectures. Maybe it was time to earn the education everyone assumed I didn't have. Not to prove anything to Ryan or his colleagues. Not even to prove anything to myself. Just because I wanted it. Because it had always been my dream, before I'd set it aside for someone else's. I filled out the application, my hand steady on the keyboard. When I clicked submit, I felt something close to joy. This was my beginning, finally. 3 months into our separation, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Ryan had been demoted. Not fired, Greenfield couldn't justify termination based on personal life revelations, but his trajectory had stalled. The promotion he'd been expecting went to someone else. Projects were reassigned. His reputation, once golden, was now tarnished with questions about integrity and honesty. Some of his friends from that dinner party had distanced themselves. Marcus apparently told others that he felt manipulated by Ryan's false narrative, that it made him question what else might be exaggerated. Patricia had unfollowed Ryan on all social media. Harold treated him with professional courtesy but no longer mentored him personally. I didn't gloat when I heard these things. Mostly, I felt sad for what we'd had, or what I thought we'd had, and sad that it had come to this. But I didn't regret telling the truth. Lies have weight, and I'd carried his for too long. Now he carried his own consequences, and I carried only myself. 4 months after I filed for divorce, Ryan's attorney contacted mine requesting a meeting. Patricia Flores called me with the news. He wants to settle quickly and quietly. No contest, clean division of assets. I met her at her office to review the proposal. Ryan was offering a fair split, nothing generous but nothing vindictive either. He wanted it finished. He's also requesting that you sign a non-disclosure agreement about the circumstances of your separation, Patricia added, watching my face. I laughed, sharp and bitter. He wants to buy my silence? Patricia shrugged. He's offering an additional $15,000 for your agreement not to discuss his educational funding publicly. It was tempting, that money could cover a year of tuition. But I shook my head. No. I won't lie for him anymore, but I won't be paid to keep his secrets either. The truth is already out. That's all I needed. Patricia smiled, proud. Good. I'll tell his attorney we accept the asset division but decline the NDA and the associated payment. The final divorce decree was signed 3 weeks later. I was finally free. 6 months after that terrible dinner party, I completed my first semester of college with straight A's. Lauren threw me a small celebration at her apartment, just the two of us, wine and takeout, nothing fancy. To the woman who educated herself and her ex-husband, she toasted, grinning. I clinked my glass against hers. Only one of us learned the lesson. We laughed, and it felt good, clean, unburdened by bitterness. I told her about my classes, how strange and wonderful it felt to sit in lectures learning for myself, not translating knowledge to someone else. How my business law professor had praised my analysis of contract disputes. How I'd joined a study group with other adult students, all of us juggling work and school and life. You're glowing, Lauren observed. This is what happiness looks like on you. She was right. I was happy, not in spite of everything that had happened, but somehow because of it. The pain had burned away pretense and revealed something true underneath. I'd found myself again, the person I'd been before I'd made myself smaller to fit someone else's story. One evening, almost a year after our separation, Ryan appeared at my apartment door. I was surprised enough to let him in, though I left the door ajar. He stood in my small living room, looking around at the life I'd built without him. You're in school, he said, noticing the textbooks on my coffee table. I nodded. Business administration. I'll have my associate's degree next semester. Something crossed his face, regret, maybe, or shame. Wendy, I came to apologize. Really apologize, not just because I got caught. He sat down without invitation, his shoulders slumped. You were right about everything. I became someone I don't even recognize. Someone who treated the person who loved him most like she didn't matter. I stayed standing, maintaining distance. Why are you telling me this now? He looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something genuine in his eyes. Because you were the smartest person in my life, and I was too arrogant to see it. You understood sacrifice, partnership, integrity, everything I claimed to value but didn't practice. His voice broke slightly. I'm sorry. You deserved so much better. I considered his words, this apology I'd once desperately wanted. Now it felt like a gift I no longer needed. Thank you for saying that, I replied quietly. I hope you mean it. He stood to leave, pausing at the door. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. For going back to school, for standing up for yourself. You're going to do amazing things. After he left, I sat by my window and realized something important. His validation didn't matter anymore. I didn't need his pride or his apology to know my worth. I'd found that on my own. I graduated 18 months later on a bright spring morning. The community college ceremony was small, held in a gymnasium decorated with blue and gold banners. Lauren sat in the audience, cheering embarrassingly loud when my name was called. I walked across that stage in my cap and gown, accepted my diploma, and felt a completeness I'd never experienced before. This achievement was mine alone, earned by my effort, paid for by my work, celebrated on my terms. After the ceremony, Lauren and I took photos by the fountain outside. So what's next? She asked. I thought about the bachelor's program I'd been accepted into, the scholarship I'd won, the future spreading out before me full of possibility. Everything, I answered, and I meant it. That evening, I wrote a final reflection in the journal I'd kept throughout this journey. I wrote about sacrifice and strength, about the difference between supporting someone's dreams and losing yourself in them. I wrote about education, not just the formal kind with diplomas and degrees, but the harder lessons learned through pain and growth. My closing words came easily, he called me uneducated. But education isn't just about degrees. It's about learning who you are, what you're worth, and having the courage to stop accepting less. Now I'm teaching the world what real education looks like. And I'm just getting started.